In today's episode, we are digging into the reasons why women are initially drawn to coaching and why we are struggling in the legal industry. I joke that this episode should really be called The Secrets That No One Is Telling You, because oftentimes in the legal industry, we lose sight of the fact that we're all struggling in so many similar ways. The challenges that we deal with in the legal industry, they're not often common topics of conversation in the coffee room. It's rare that we are able to find trusted allies within the legal industry with whom to share our tales of woe. So for that reason, coaching can often feel like a long sought after safe haven where all of the things you've been wanting to scream from the rooftops can finally get some airtime. So today we're digging into the top 6 reasons why women come to coaching and the challenges that we work to overcome.